Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is Sanjay Srivastava. I'm the founder and CEO of Vocarium, and I have David Lane with me here, who runs our business development. And let me go ahead and see if I can go on, turn my video on. There you go. So David Lane, who runs business development for Vocarium. So here's the agenda. I will go through a few slides and give you a little bit of an overview of Vocarium, and hopefully it'll take about 10 minutes. And then actually we have this from last, we will, at this point, we will, at that point, David will take over and give you a demo of Vocarium, and then we will have Q&As. You can ask questions at any time through chat, and we'll try to answer it. But definitely after the demos are done, then we'll have a Q&A session. So let's talk a little bit about Vocarium. So we are in the business of providing virtual labs. Virtual labs for us means these are spaces which have compute and storage completely ready for the learner, and they can access it through the browser. And as a teacher, you can assign not only the content and the tools and the compute and storage for the learner, but also constraints like when do the labs become available, how much time the learner can spend there, and in certain cases like cloud, how much money can the learner spend in terms of the cloud budget. So our mission is to deliver these virtual labs and assessments securely on budget and at scale. Hopefully, as we go through this presentation, it'll become a little bit clearer what we mean by those securely, budget, and scale. So we have at this point about 600,000 learners who are enrolled in active classes on Vocarium. They represent at least 700 universities, 600 of them in US alone, and then another 100 or so worldwide, and a lot of our corporate partners. So what is being taught in Vocarium? We are serving a diverse broad range of subject areas. They range from data science, programming, engineering, big data, machine learning, cloud computing, databases, full stack, DevOps, and cybersecurity. I would say the three most popular topics in Vocarium are data science, programming, and cloud computing. For cloud computing, we have a very robust partnership with AWS, which brings a lot of learners to our platform. But increasingly, we are seeing more and more interest in other topics. Like, for example, big data. We have quite a few courses using our Hadoop clusters, or if you're teaching full stack, and more and more of cybersecurity labs as well. Our Vocarium was deployed in 2014 primarily for computer science classes, and as time went on, we have been deployed in all these diverse topics. But also, what we picked up because of interaction with a lot of great faculty over time is ideas about assessment strategies. So we have automated grading, manual grading, and by manual grading, what we mean in sometimes we have had as many as 800 to 1,000 students in a residential class, which are being graded by maybe 50 or 60 different graders, could be a graduate or undergrad graders. So we have a lot of capability in the platform to help you manage manual grading also. In context feedback, so you can you provide feedback in the context of code. Computational leaderboard, this has become more popular, especially for machine learning. So for example, if you go to our website, you will see a case study from Cornell from a machine learning class where there are about 500 students, where the students get a data set which they work on. And then when they're done with the algorithm design, they will submit it, and their algorithms are measured, evaluated against some hidden data sets. And then based on the performance, they are placed on a leaderboard. This is becoming more and more popular, primarily because of machine learning, as I said. Mastery learning, so sorry about that. So mastery learning means that you can actually arrange your assignments so that the students have to finish one before they move on to the second one. Peer review is another very sort of widely used capability on our platform. And we support them through a very diverse architecture. So one of the things which is unique about us is that you might be able to find other platforms, for example, which might be good enough for your CS1 classes, or maybe a VDI app solution. But we do, to support a broad range of topics, we have a broad range of IT infrastructure in the backend, which is used to support web applications. These are hosted web applications by Vocarium. Streaming Linux application, what we mean by that, the applications which need a GUI, for example, Eclipse or MySQL Workbench, batch compute clusters, and essentially we have our own compute clusters for grading, but also we host and support things like Spark clusters. Cloud infrastructure, this is once again very, very big part of our platform, where we can give where we can provide cloud credentials to the students, and these credentials can be sort of contained by policies and budgets and time, just to make sure that students don't leave the machines running, or maybe use resources which are too expensive. And these are completely hosted managed by Vocarium, which means we manage the upgrading the operating system versions or tools. But if it does not fit in here, your application, then you can bring your own application, and you can do it primarily through one of three architectures. You can bring Docker containers, and we can use it to deliver and scale a network of these, or you can bring virtual machine images, or AppStream. And AppStream is the Amazon technology for delivering Windows applications. So for example, you might want to deliver a commercial Windows applications, then you can deliver it through the AppStream architecture, which is served by Vocarium, which is managed by Vocarium. So here's once again a little bit more complete list of the web applications that we provide. These might be Jupyter Notebook, which is one of the most popular applications on our platforms. RStudio, terminals, MySQL databases are becoming more and more important. So we provide natively MySQL database, Mongo, Neo4j, and Postgres. Hadoop applications, and I already talked about it. We support a wide range of machine learning frameworks, of course, the most popular ones being TensorFlow and PyTorch. We have IDEs like Eclipse, and Cloud9, Node. We support Node.js, and we support lots and lots of different languages like C, C++, Scala, Go, Python, Java, PHP, and quite a few more. Here are some of the GUIs which we currently have on our platform natively, like MySQL Workbench, Eclipse, Rattle, Spider, Firefox browser, pgadmin, and we're continuously adding. For example, Neo4j desktop should be available very, very soon on our platform. We are integrated with learning management LMSs. So they are essentially, we do it through LTI. And Canvas is one of the very, very popular LMS which integrates us. But we are also, there are our customers using us with edX, Blackboard, Moodle, Sakai, D2L, Coursera. After the whole the COVID crisis hit us, the biggest demand on Vocarium immediately was for exams, because as the exams moved from residential to virtual, so we have been supporting, we have a lot of features which are specific to exams. So we can support synchronous exams with, say, about 500 students. Once again, if you go to our website, you will see a case study from Singapore University, SUTD, where they had synchronous exam for 500 students. They are secured through a Safe Exam browser integration that Vocarium provides. Safe Exam browsers, for those you don't know, is an open source lockdown browser. Asynchronous exam, this is becoming very popular. So for example, you can configure Vocarium to say the students can start the exam over the next 3 days. But once they started, they have about 90 minutes to finish it. We have scheduled proctored certification tests. This is something which we launched with a corporate partner. So a student can go to PSI and say, I want to have a certificate test like over the next couple of days. And Vocarium will launch a cluster for the students, and then send the link to the proctor, and managed. And then when the learner is finished, then the grading is run and the certifications are issued all automatically. We can do things like we can check whether the learner came from a specific IP address. We can deliver random tests from a bank of problems. And there's a built-in plagiarism detection test as a part of the platform. Another thing which is unique about us is that we do not believe that one IDE can serve everything. And we do believe when the learners go out to the professional world, they should be working with, they should have the knowledge of all the tools that they'll be using in the real world. So we will support not only our own IDE, which will give you a little bit of introduction to later on, but also, and we already talked about Jupyter and RStudio and Cloud9 and Eclipse and many others. Something else which we are very, very aware of from day one in Vocarium, that we wanted to build a system which was not only suitable for beginning, say, computer science, but also can be used to do advanced coursework and research. For example, if you go to our website, recently we announced support for the COVID hackathon in partnership with NIH and Stanford and AWS, which means for us that the workspace cannot be just one tool, but might be a combination of tools. For example, you might want to go to Jupyter Notebook, and you might want to give learners an access to AWS credential so they can use one of the services, or launch their job on a Hadoop cluster, or get access to a databases. And also they should be able to run these long jobs. So for example, the longest job we have seen is the 48-hour job from Columbia for their machine learning MacroMasters. Large data sets. So the largest data set we have seen is 0.5 terabyte data. So once again, hopefully it's giving you an idea that not only Vocarium can be used for small assignments and assessment, but also for advanced coursework and research. We have been deployed in all sorts of contexts, certainly MOOCs and hands-on labs, skill-based exams. We have talked training, boot camps, hackathons, research. I was just talking about that. Syndication, where you want to develop a content and deploy it broadly. Virtual campus labs. So essentially, there are sometimes a university will want to just take their on-prem computer labs and move it to the cloud. Security, and this is a topic specifically for, say, corporate machine learning universities. We are seeing more and more demand for companies saying that we want to develop a machine learning university, but in the lab, we want to bring our proprietary data set. So just for the security purposes, we want to be completely isolated in our own network. And so we have the architecture to support that. So your data and your compute will be completely in your own VPC. REST APIs, we do understand that labs do not exist in isolation. So we have a rich set of REST APIs for you to integrate with other systems, as well as for analytics and for integrating to your storage system, for example, GitHub. Thank you. At this point, I would like to hand it over to David Lin for a demo.
Oops. Hello, everyone. As Sanjay mentioned, this is David Lin, and I am going to share my screen and walk through a demo of the platform. As Sanjay mentioned, the platform is pretty broad, and so what I'm going to do is share what we call a course, which contains a series of lab environments. And here we've got different lab environments to kind of simulate different situations or different assignments or labs that you might want to deploy to your learners. For the first one, and I'm taking a look at this from the learner perspective, and then we can switch over to a teacher perspective. And then after that, I will actually move it and show you what it might look like inside an LMS. Give me a second here. Okay, so so this first assignment is a Python assignment that's using the Vocarium IDE, as Sanjay mentioned. We have our own IDE, but we also will support any number of commercial IDEs. So your learners can get a sense of, kind of a very simple environment just to learn the coding or learn concepts, and then they can get into a more heavy-duty environment to work on assignments that simulate the real world. Okay, and so in this example, we've got a file browser, we've got a file editor, and then we also have a terminal environment. Okay, and so this is essentially an assignment to go and fix a factorial.py file. Okay, and so the instructor provided starter code so that a student, when they come in, will have some code to start with. This instructor provided some helper functions. So when the student clicks run, it'll actually run a teacher program button to execute the code. Okay, and here it's running running code Python factorial pi 1 2 3, and then there's some errors in this code. And so what we need to do is go ahead and fix the code. Okay, when we go and update the code, for example, and it looks like there's some syntax errors and stuff like that. So we can go and fix it. We can go and submit the code. And once the code is submitted, then what happens is the student work area gets copied off into our grading server, and then it's scheduled for grading by our auto grader. Okay, and so as Sanjay mentioned, we can have auto grading, we can have teacher assisted grading, so manual grading, and then also peer review. So students can, after they have submitted, then they can go off and go review some other student code as well. Okay, and so here it came back and said you got zeros because it didn't run, and so probably because we had some syntax errors and there's some code broken here. Okay, and so what the student could do is if they went and completely destroyed the code, they can go and reset the assignment as well. Okay, and so when the assignment gets reset, then they can go back to the original starter code and again do the work. As I mentioned earlier, we also have a terminal here. So if they wanted to, they can go and execute the code directly, and they can write their own unit tests, or they can go and execute whatever other code. So we can do factorial pi 24246, and again there's some errors, so we have to go and fix that. Okay, and so as a student, so that's one example. Here's another example, which is a Python code that's running in a Jupyter environment. And as Sanjay mentioned, data science is a very, very popular subject area for the courses right now. And so what we have is a hosted Jupyter notebook environment. And so students can go and directly launch Jupyter Notebook with the starter code. They can go in here and execute the notebook, and the way that this is auto-graded is slightly different in that we're using a library called MVGrader, in which the instructor can actually code up the assessment directly inside the Jupyter Notebook, and then when they deploy it to the students, the assessments get removed. But when the student goes and submits, then the assessments get added back in and graded, and the student can get the results right back again. And again, when a student submits, they can go and get a grade. And so here, what we have set up is that the student can submit a limited number of times with no due date. And obviously, if you needed to, you can set a due date. You can say, okay, you only get 2 submissions. Or you can say, okay, we'll give you unlimited submissions, but we want to restrict the frequency to 1 submission every 10 minutes. So they're not kind of gaming the system and just tweaking the code a tiny bit just to see what happens. Okay, and so there's a lot of different things that you can do here. Again, There's a Jupyter environment. We have RStudio as well. And so you'll notice that these are, as Sanjay mentioned, these are all running inside a shared Unix environment. And so it comes up very, very quickly. Okay, and so we've got the Jupyter
David,
code.
can I answer a question
Yes.
live? There's a question that says, how do you get the run button to appear? And basically, maybe you can answer that, like, if you write a script, it will appear. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So if you, so basically from the teacher ID, and I'll show you the teacher ID shortly. In the teacher ID, we can actually program those buttons, right? And so if you actually program a run.sh button, that will actually appear in the student area. And then we similarly, we program the submit, or we can program a grading button. We can program a build. So for example, if you have a C environment and you need to have a compile step, if you're an early learner for computer science, for C coding, maybe you don't, you're not super familiar with all the compile steps, and maybe all you're doing is really learning the C syntax, then a build button may be helpful, a build and a run, and you can get your results. And I'll show that very, very shortly. Okay, and so that's RStudio. And then we have the ability to actually mix the environment with cloud credentials as well. And here we have AWS. And so what we are doing, and this is an example of setting up a static website using AWS and S3. And so here, what we can do is we can go and grab an AWS credential. Okay, and so we hit Start Lab that triggers a process in the back to fetch some credentials. To have certain resources available, a certain budget, and then a time constraint. Okay, and now that we've started an AWS lab, we can actually go and launch straight into AWS as well. Okay, and so here's an AWS environment that's for this specific user, for this specific lab. Okay, and so that's completely dedicated one-off for this environment, for this user. Okay, it's not shared or anything like that. Okay, and so as a user, we also link it to the AWS CLI, so we can also go and execute things like EC2 describe instances, right? And so it's got a credential. It's essentially a cloud console here going and querying the environment. And I'm not sure why it's a little slow. There it is. But so it went and queried the environment. It's a brand new clean environment. When I hit nlab, anything I have done inside that AWS environment gets terminated. Okay, and it gets reset. If I hit submit, it'll actually submit and run some scripts against the AWS environment. So we can actually go and query, hey, have we done the steps that the instructor requested as part of this, right? And at the end, you can submit and you can get a result, and then you can go in and continue to augment your work if you need to. Okay, so that's kind of an AWS environment using the Vocarium IDE. Again, we can turn on a source code editor as well as program go and run the cloud. Okay, so that's all.
Hey, David, can you hear me? David? David, you are beginning to lag here. I think your internet.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now you're fine. Yeah, there was a brief period, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, hopefully, keep fingers crossed.
Okay. Okay. Do I need to go back and review what we just covered there? The AWS stuff?
No, I think AWS was okay, most of it. I think we just towards the very end, I think we were okay, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, and so, and then I'll jump down to this one because this is a Jupyter environment using AWS as well. Okay, and so this is similar to what we just had with with a Vocarium IDE, but now we've got a Jupyter IDE, and we can also start a lab, grab a different credential from the one that we had here. And this one I'm going to go and sign out. And now when this launches, we can launch into AWS. But what's interesting here is now this environment has the credential, and I can go and execute this program that uses Boto 3, which is an AWS SDK, right? So I can go and just go and run, and it's using the AWS Comprehend, and then it's analyzing a sample tweet using Comprehend, and so on. And so I'm getting a little lag here too, but there it is. So that's Jupyter in an AWS environment. And again, these are all running on our Unix shared server. What I'd like to show you now is our container labs. Okay, and so here we've got a Jupyter lab, which is kind of like Jupyter Hub, but it's the next version, right? And so, so this will take a few seconds. And what's nice about this environment is it is container-based, and so we can give you full control of the container environment, right? We can give you sudo access. We can give you, you know, and we can provide you the ability to make modifications into that container if you need to, right? So it's not a shared environment. It is kind of a sandbox for your users directly. Okay, and again, you know, this is a different IDE. We've got terminal access and all. Okay. I'm going to leave this one, and then, and as Sanjay mentioned, we can also provide access to MySQL and to various databases. And here we've got a MySQL database, and we can also provide access to a MySQL Workbench. And MySQL Workbench is interesting in that it's not actually a web app, right? It's actually a streamed app. Okay, so it's running on a Linux environment, and it's streamed. And so what we're doing is we'll start a Linux and stream the application to our window here. And this is all browser-based, right? So there's no installation that's required for you or your users. And so we've got you know, some instruction here, and then we launch right into a MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench, you know, can take up a lot of room, so we can go and, you know, expand the window, get access to Workbench, and work essentially in a desktop environment. Okay, and so if we wanted to, we can actually close this out and have access to a Linux desktop environment, right? And what we have done is launched a MySQL database in a container, and then we're connecting this Workbench environment to that container. And then here we're just going to show you, you know, very quickly a full stack lab as well. And again, this is a different IDE, and this one we're going to show a container that's running a mean stack. So it's got Mongo and Angular and Node and stuff like that. And so here, this mean stack will run Thea, Eclipse, and so you'll have an Eclipse IDE that, and I'll take a few seconds here. And so then, you know, Eclipse obviously is a professional grade IDE that you can use to. So it's a little more complex, of course, than the Vocarium IDE, but it's something that you know, as you progress into the upper levels of computer science or analytics, you'll probably want to use that. So it is taking a little too long here. So let me
I think what might have happened is that we started a whole new set of servers. So maybe it's the very first time. Maybe it was not preloaded. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this one is a VM lab, and so this is different from the shared servers, the shared environments, and then the container environments. This is actually launching a VM per user. Okay, and so I actually started this VM in the background because it will take you know, five minutes to launch. And so we have a Kali Linux VM running, and so we can connect to this VM. And again, we have this VM preloaded with all sorts of applications. Okay, and so for example, with Kali, you can do all sorts of penetration testing, doing some exploiting and stuff like that. And so here's some exploitation tools. You can do some password attacks. And so this, you can essentially build a cyber range. And here we're just showing one VM, but we can actually run 5 VMs at the same time. We can launch 5 in parallel. We can have a Kali Linux VM, and then we can have, I think someone asked earlier, can you have 4 Windows 2016 servers plus another Windows 10 environment, and we could do that, right? And we can go and test a cyber range, and then when we are done with it, we click End Lab, and that whole thing gets torn down. Okay, and so you can go and practice things, and everything is secured, right, inside our own VPC, and we can block all the traffic out, so you're not actually impacting anyone else out there. Okay, so if you wanted to do cybersecurity, sort of courses that we can support that. I'm not sure why my computer is not. So, there we go. Okay, and so that's kind of walking through a bunch of the student environments. And what I'd like to do here now is switch over to the instructor side and kind of walk you through a few things. Okay, as an instructor, this is the instructor ID, and as an instructor, you'll see that I've got all these labs that we just went through, and then we've got a whole bunch of other demo labs that we have set up, but these are not published, and so the student did not get to see those. Okay, and so these are the published ones, and so we've got this environment, and so as a course level, we have set this up to be called Demo 2020. If we wanted to tie this into an LMS, we can turn on LTI settings. Okay, and then we can go and set up the LTI keys and stuff like that. And I'll show you Vocarium embedded inside LMSs as well. We can set up some course parameters, some resource limits, and other items here. Okay, and so when we talk about the very first one, which is this Python standard ID, we can actually see that this assignment has one part, and so assignments can have one or more parts. We're saying that when a student has completed and submitted their assignment, we'll publish grades immediately so they can get immediate feedback. But if you wanted to, you can hold back the grades. Okay, we can turn on team projects such that if there are multiple users or multiple students, we can actually set up a team, and we can say the team size, you can start solo if you wanted to, or you can start the team size to be 2, and it's a max of 4, right? And then what happens is, as a student comes in, they can decide to start as a single person, or they can go and invite another student. And once the student gets invited, then the other student can go and accept that invitation, that sort of thing. And then we can also turn on things like peer review. And so we can say, okay, when we do a peer review, when does that happen, right? Are we going to allow the peer review to start immediately after they have completed all the submissions, or we're going to schedule it, right? And then we can allow, and we can specify how many reviews per student, and then, are we going to just allow the peer to provide feedback, or are we also allowing the peer to score the other people's work? Okay, and then leaderboard, as Sanjay mentioned, we can actually place the students on a leaderboard, and what that means is you can essentially set up a competition for a given assignment. And so based on the score that a student gets, they get placed on a leaderboard, either anonymously or with an alias, and then they can do some comparisons against each other. There's actually a case study on our website from Cornell where they're talking about the leaderboard functionality, and especially in data science is quite interesting because there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, right? Because there's different ways to solve that problem, and then we can kind of see the quality of the results and see how they compare. And so students typically will go and be more engaged because it's a competition and they're trying to, outdo each other. As Sanjay mentioned, we also have what's called an exam mode. Okay, and exam mode basically means that, and right now it's published, so we can't turn on the exam mode. But if we unpublish it, now we can turn on the exam mode, and then we can specify, how this exam is set up, and we can say it's manually scheduled, it's timed. Timed or unrestricted. So it's kind of like the synchronous or asynchronous sort of exams, and we can set up a key for Safe Exam Browser such that certain browser, once they come in, it's locked to this exam, and the student can go and do something else. Okay, so that kind of sets up the assignment on a high level, and then we can also go and specify more options like submissions. So right now, as you saw earlier, we're not specifying a due date, but we could, where we can also specify that the students can submit late up to a certain date, right? And we can specify some of the grading sort of options here. We can say, okay, there's unlimited submissions or a set number of submissions, what is submission interval, that sort of thing. And then we can also specify, if they are submitting late, what are the penalties, right? Is it a percentage or is it exponential? Is it fixed? And what is the what is the rule when we talk about multiple submissions? Can we just get the last submission, or do we want the best submission, right? That sort of thing. And here we're specifying the rubric, and here we have criteria 1 and 2, which are auto-graded, and then style, which could be manually graded by the instructor. Then lastly, here we're specifying the workspace. Okay, so this is using this Vocarium standard IDE. We can use the Jupyter Notebook. We also have a container lab, as we talked about earlier. We have a VM lab. And so these are all different styles of the workspace that we support. In addition to that, we can attach resources. As we showed you earlier, we can attach cloud resources. Okay, and so here I can just turn on Cloud Labs, and now I can actually have things like, okay, what is the session length for this cloud credential, right? What happens at the end of the session? Do I terminate the resources or just stop it? Okay, and then we can also specify the budget for those resources. We could say, okay, for this lab, I'm going to specify that they get $4. Okay, and then we can also specify things like, how much time they can spend inside a lab, that sort of thing. Okay, and then we can go and configure the lab, the environment or the assignment itself. And so someone was asking, how do you program the run button? And so it's just a very simple shell script, right? And so for this Python standard, we actually have a run button, and this is a shell script that just says echo, this is a teacher program button, and we're just going to go and execute Python factorial apply 1, 2, 3. Right, and when a student submits the work, and there's nothing here, but when the student submits it, so we can give feedback to the student on submission, and then we can also provide grades. Okay, and so when it's empty, that basically means we're just going to skip that step, right? But when we have grade.sh, basically that means, okay, now we're going to do, we can run a grading script, and here the grading script is very, very simple. It's executing a test, factorial 369, send it to an output and do an output comparison. And then here our second rubric item was factorial 4.5, and then we're doing the comparison again. Okay, and so we can make that as simple or as sophisticated as you like. You can write your own Python scripts. We have instructors who are using, style checkers. They're running unit tests. They're doing all sorts of interesting and cool things. For example, with the Cornell competition, they had a whole sophisticated algorithm with regards to the score for a given submission. And then we can deliver starter code, okay, to the student. And so basically, if we drop anything in here, it could be a simple programming file. It could be a library. It could be some other helper stuff, or it could be empty. right? And so it depends on what you want to deliver to the student to start with. We also have what we call the assignment library and a course level library. Okay, at assignment library, we can actually provide additional facilities and then also additional data as well. And so Sanjay mentioned that there are some classes that are providing data sets that are read-only to the students. Okay, and so we can deliver those data sets through this public area. Okay, and when the student has submitted the work, the instructor can go into the dashboard and review the student submissions. Okay, and so we can go here and we'll see that David T9 had done a submission, and we can go and view the submission. He had a submission at at 8:47 today, and here's his code, and he got some scores. We can override the scores. We can say, okay, he got 3 here, he got a 2, and we can give some feedback. And if we wanted to, we can go and inspect the code. We can actually write feedback in line as well. We can say, here we are. Save it. We'll save this. And if I go back to the student and click over here, oh, it's unpublished. Let me go back and publish it. So when I publish it, then the student has access to this this assignment again. Okay. And so the student can go back to my work. They can go to their submission and they can see the inline feedback from the instructor. They can go and review their scores and see additional feedback here. Okay, so that's kind of the round trip there, right? Where the instructor sets up the assignment, the student can go and run the assignment, they can go and test it, they can go and submit it, and once it's submitted, the instructor can get the scores, they can go and walk through the different submissions from the different students and provide feedback. Okay, so it's a pretty simple environment here. Okay, and so what I like to do now is shift gears a little bit and show you what it looks like inside the LMSs. Okay, and so this is a Canvas environment, and the integration to Canvas is through LTI. Okay, and so what we can do is we'll switch over to a student view, and you'll see that it's pretty seamless, right? And so this is that Python graded assignment again. And so you'll see that there's some text here that the instructor can put in, and then the Vocarium is actually iframed in that assignment. Okay, and so again, the student can go and execute the code. They can go to the next one, and this one is the Python Jupyter assignment. Okay, and again, they can go and it's essentially launched and directly inside the environment. So if you are integrated to an LMS, then, or if you're using an LMS, then we will integrate straight inside. There's no need for a student to go to the Vocarium site directly. So what's nice is when you're integrated to the LMS, the student doesn't have a separate login necessarily to Vocarium, right? They can do everything within this LMS. Similarly, this is an edX environment. And so let me reload this here. And so here, what I'm showing you is, the different labs inside, in line with the text and instructional material. So there could be some text here, and then there's a simple programming assignment, and then we also have a Jupyter assignment in here as well. Okay, and so there could be more text, it could be video, whatever, right? And so this is quite nice. It's very streamlined environment for the student. One thing I forgot to mention is I think it was in this guy. We can also oops, let me reload this guy so I grab that credential. And we can also deliver deliver instruction in different. Oh, that's wrong student. Sorry. Give me a second. Let me get out of student view. Okay, now I'll grab the right credential here. Okay, so
Hey, David, since we are kind of running over, maybe we should open Q&A. We should also, yeah, if you guys have any questions, can you please type in chat? I'll try to answer as much as I can, because I realize that, yeah. Send you go ahead. Sorry, David.
no problem. Yeah, that's fine. Let's.
Yeah.
I'll stop the share here.
No, you can continue. I'm just saying that.
Are there any questions right now?
So Paul, he mentioned that he wanted a summary of the teacher ID, the functionality. But essentially, Paul, what we have in the teacher ID, there's a file system at the end of the day, and that file system has certain directories like starter code and scripts, which have a certain meaning, and then that's used to deliver data to either learners, or it's used to deliver data for grading, right? And so you can hide the stuff for grading. There are certain files which have a certain meaning, like README. If you drop something in README, then we will show up as a README. If you have something like init.sql, then we'll use it to initialize the database. So unfortunately, that file system, there are components which do different things based on the lab type. So yeah, but essentially you upload files, and then the system will interpret it depending on the lab type. Now I know it's a pretty sort of I don't know, David, if you want to add that anything to that.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Any other questions? I realize. So doesn't look like we have any more questions. David, do you have anything to add?
No, yeah, we're happy to work with you. There's obviously a lot to cover in our platform, so if you have any questions, we can go offline and answer them for you.
Thank you so much, Shakur. I appreciate that. So I will, looking forward to hearing from you, and we can obviously do a demo, focused on any aspect of it, maybe, one-on-one, or maybe do another webinar if you guys think that you would like to see, something explored in more details. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.